Aren't you glad you've got a state pension? I know I am. It's just great to know the government cares about us and will look after us in our old age. Kind of like having parents, only better because it's even bigger and even stronger, and not selfish like parents are.
Also, more likely to be around at that point.
And it works so well too. You just pay money in and later you get more out. I know this because I can see pensioners getting their money out now. Obviously the money is properly invested and gives an excellent return. So I simply cannot understand why the party poopers are maundering on about dangerous pension liabilities leading to unsustainable government deficits and debts. Don't they believe what the prime ministers and presidents tell us? Look, here is what President Obama is saying, and if he doesn't know what he's talking about, then I just don't know who does.
I'm with you there.
To put us on solid ground, we should also find a bipartisan solution to strengthen social security for future generations. And we must do it without putting at risk current retirees, the most vulnerable, or people with disabilities, without slashing benefits for future generations, and without subjecting Americans' guaranteed retirement income to the whims of the stock market. I wonder what he means about put us on solid ground. Anyway, see. No problem. Pensioners can have all their pensions now, and it doesn't matter how the economy goes because pensions are guaranteed by the government to be just as good in the future. You see, unlike that guy in Enron, you know, the one who was protecting Enron against losses by capitalizing independent companies with Enron shares, which independent companies promised to pay Enron whatever amount Enron shares went down in value.
Yeah, seriously, what an idiot, eh? But that's capitalism for you.
The government knows how to make these things work. And that's what I want from a government. Promises of what we want at very cheap prices, like Walmart and Asda, only moral instead.
I expect you'll have seen that cruel parody of the president's wisdom. You know, the one that goes, to keep me from going bust we should also find a solution, agreeable to both our investors and me, to strengthen Bernard Madoff investment securities for future investors. And we must do it without putting at risk current investors, who are the most vulnerable and deserve special privileges, without slashing returns for future investors, and without subjecting investors' guaranteed investment income to the whims of the stock market.
I mean, obviously that's complete nonsense. Bernie Madoff never invested the money at all. He simply took money in from new investors and paid some of it out to old investors and spent the rest on himself and his cronies.
He certainly didn't subject the investors' guaranteed investment income to the whims of the stock market.
What? Well, yes, okay, I suppose technically that's right. Ha ha. Very clever.
And anyway, the government hasn't got the money invested either.
Sorry. The government hasn't got the money invested either. So what's it been doing all this time?
Taking in money from workers, paying some of it out to pensioners and spending the rest on the government and its cronies.
You've got to be kidding me. You've just been taken in by propaganda. What are you, some kind of an anarchist?
Does that matter?
Well, all right. I suppose it doesn't matter what kind of a nutcase you are. What matters is whether what you say is true. But it can't be true because if it was, there'd be no difference between a Ponzi scheme and a pension scheme.
They'd be Penzions.
Yes, they'd be Penzions. Ha ha. Very droll. Keep the day job if I were you. As I was saying, obviously there is a difference. Ponzi schemes are immoral whereas state pension schemes are very moral, so you just wrong.
I can prove it.
You can prove it.
Yes, look here. Wikipedia says, Pension arrangements provided by the state in most countries in the world are unfunded, with benefits paid directly from current workers' contributions and taxes.
No, but look, it says that in the US the Social Security is funded by investment in special US Treasury bonds, so that's all right then.
How does that work?
Well, the workers give their money to the government, and the government spends the money and signs pieces of paper promising to pay that money, and gives the pieces of paper to the Social Security Fund. Now, and here is where you need to pay close attention, and marshal what you can of your inconsiderable intellect to attempt to grasp some basic economic ideas. So I'll go slowly. Those pieces of paper are bonds, don't you see? Which makes them investments. So you are wrong again.
Is the Social Security Fund part of the government?
What? Yes, of course it is. That's the whole point. You can rely on the government for this kind of thing because, unlike businesses, the politicians in charge are there for us, so obviously they are the best people to have our pensions in their hands.
So the investment is just a promise that the government gives to itself to give itself some money?
Yes, I suppose so. Nothing wrong with that.
But that's like writing a promise to your left pocket to give it some money from your right pocket and thinking your trousers have got an investment.
Please try and keep up. We're not talking about hosiery.
Whoever said we were? I'll try again. What the government does is like Enron giving itself its own shares, so it can sell them to give itself some money if it goes bust.
No, of course it's not like that. If it goes bust, no one will want to buy its shares. That's the bit the guy at Enron got wrong. Whereas the government, completely different. The government doesn't just write itself promises. If no one else wants to buy the special Social Security bonds it gives to the Social Security Fund, it can print its own money to buy them, whereas obviously Enron couldn't do anything like that.
So you're saying that the only thing Enron got wrong was it forgot to buy a printing press?
No. Of course I'm not saying that. For God's sake. Look. Don't you understand? Politicians are good people who care about us, whereas Enron was just a bunch of greedy businessmen out for themselves.
What about the other countries?
Well, yes, I suppose that makes you right about them. Okay, smarty pants, so you're very good at this, being technically right about all the wrong things. Aristotle had a word for people like you. What we need, though, is phronesis, practical wisdom. Unlike you, I'm not obsessed with meretricious fatuality. I care about people's welfare, and you're ignoring what matters. It's not what is done with the money but what is promised. What Madoff did was wrong because he promised but couldn't deliver, whereas what the government does is right because what it promises it can deliver. After all, if necessary it can make people carry on giving it money so it can pay out, and Madoff couldn't do that.
So you're saying that the only thing the Madoff got wrong was that he lacked an army?
What? No, I'm not saying that. God. What's the matter with you? Don't you trust politicians? Look, I just don't think there's any point in carrying this further. Maybe after you've learnt a bit of respect for your elders and betters who undertake the burdens of office, and a bit of real economics wouldn't go amiss either. But until then, goodbye.